right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from today. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for our event. If you've been following along, you know that we have been rocking World Ocean Week. So in partnership with the Explorers Club, we are meeting scientists and researchers and conservationists from around the world who are sharing their adventures, their stories, documenting, researching, and protecting our ocean. If you haven't visited the site yet, take a few moments and visit exploringbytheseat.com/Ocean Week. You can find all the live events we have coming up, usually 3 to 4 live events a day, all the way through until Friday. So check it out there. All the registration details are available. And then best of all is the days have some great themes on the go. So on Monday, we rocked the deep sea. We had a trip to the exploration vessel Nautilus out at Johnston Atoll. Today, we've been talking about marine creatures. That was our morning theme with sea turtles, penguins, and octopus. And we've got a great afternoon event coming up. I'm so excited that we have Fabien Cousteau joining us today, aquanaut, Ocean Geographic explorer, environmental advocate, and founder of PROTEUS Ocean Group, as well as the nonprofit, the Fabien Cousteau Ocean Learning Center. So Fabien is the first grandson of Jacques-Yves Cousteau, and he spent his early years aboard his grandfather's famous ships. He learned how to scuba dive on his as early as his fourth birthday. His passion for exploring and making discoveries below the sea has been with him his entire life. In 2014, during Mission 31, Fabien and his team of aquanauts lived underwater for 31 days. They embarked on an important expedition of science, research, and human-ocean connection. Now, I'm going to bring Fabien in with us in just one moment, but we have a little video here that I'm going to share to kind of cue up what we're getting up to today. So let me make sure I share the right window, and here we go.
What if we built the International Space Station of the Sea and were able to offer it to science, to education, and to outreach? That's how Proteus was born.
Can you give me a sense of the science that can be achieved when you're underwater?
Being there at first, we get a much better sense of
a habitat under the ocean often goes in first.
I truly believe by building the most advanced research station based at the bottom of the sea, it can offer the world some invaluable insight, from hydrocarbon pollution and microplastics to biodiversity to biomechanics. It really is the missing tool in the toolbox of ocean exploration. We have some amazing partners to help us map not only the Proteus site, but also the entire marine park. We have Carmabi, who are the local NGO here who are taking care of the marine park.
Project Proteus is, I think, for Curaçao, very important because it's unique in the world. It's unique in the world. I mean, as simple as that. And that's the type of project we need on Curaçao.
There's Map the Gaps.
For us, it's a great opportunity to not just collaborate with leading scientists and explorers, but also give back some knowledge of the seafloor to the people of Curaçao.
And we have R2 Sonic with their technology who are helping us get a better understanding of the bottom and have a comprehensive map for ourselves and for the people of Curaçao.
It's about building networks and building connections and increasing our knowledge of the oceans, and we're happy to contribute to that.
We're going into a place that is largely unknown. So the opportunities there are so deep, so wide. What will we stand to lose by not knowing more about the ocean world?
Searching for a better way to collaborate with your team? Try mail.
All right. Sneaky ad popping up before the video even ended. Let's bring Fabien in live with us right now. Hey, Fabien, how are you?
Hey, Joe. Great to be here. Wow. Thanks to Explorers Club. Thanks to you. And thanks to all those young explorers out there.
Absolutely. Fabien, Proteus looks amazing. I remember years ago now, we connected for a connection while you were on Aquarius. And Proteus looks like it's going to be kind of a souped up, amazing underwater lab. You've got to tell us a little bit about it. Where did this inspiration come from? And, what are you hoping to achieve?
Sure. Well, I mean, the Proteus is slated to be versus Aquarius, the difference between a Model T Ford and a Tesla, right? And so with that, if I could, I'd love to share a few visuals with you while we talk along. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get the screen share going, and I'll bring it up nice and front and center for the classrooms.
All right, here we go.
There it is. We're good.
So, before we talk about Proteus, we kind of have to take a step back to really get an idea of why Proteus. And if we look at history of underwater habitats, specifically history of ocean exploration, the habitats have existed in some fashion, usually for short-term durations, since the 1960s. The first actual habitats, not life support vessels, but habitats, started with Conch Shelf 1. And throughout the decades, there have been no less than about 70 habitats of different shapes and sizes and so on and so forth. Conch Shelf 2 being the largest in 1964-5. And when we look at today's world, there's one habitat that's functioning still as a marine laboratory in the world, and that's Aquarius. And I had the privilege and honor to lead a team of 6 on the longest mission at Aquarius a few years back. Aquarius is an underwater habitat about the size of a school bus, and it's today about 36 years old. So it's a very antiquated platform on many levels. But since it's the only one of its kind, and it has capabilities that allow for us to communicate with the outside world live from the bottom of the sea, it was still an amazing experience, and one that allowed us to leverage that very unique platform to do over 3 years worth of scientific research, as opposed to, say, being posted on the surface on a vessel and diving down. And we were able to reach, as you mentioned, over 100,000 students live from Skype in the classroom and all over the world, which was really awesome. Now, today, of course, those audiovisual facilities and internet facilities are much easier than it was a few years ago, like we're doing today. But that was really the essence of the experimentation of why underwater habitats are so important, at least to me, to validate what that platform was. And so when we look at a platform like an underwater habitat, it stands to reason, in my mind anyway, as someone who doesn't take the word impossible as a viable option, something we should strike from the dictionary. Why is it that we spend so much time looking up at and investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the next decade in space tourism when we have a place that's at least as amazing, as mysterious, and much more full of life, at least in the next 20, 30 years, that's tangible to be able to experiment with, that to be able to discover, to be able to look at for solutions that will be much more viable, much more pragmatic for our long-term trajectory as a species. And so it just made sense that we should build the International Space Station of the Ocean. Now, the ocean is, as many people forget, is our life support system. It is the only reason we exist in this universe. It is the universal connector. It is quite literally the best social media that we could have, because it connects all of us in very fundamental ways. Ways that give us the things that we need, doing things that we love, the things that we cherish, of course, the things we depend on, and that we need to give back to our future generations. And so with a platform like Proteus, it's basically the missing tool in the toolbox of ocean exploration. We've explored less than 5%, maybe 5-6% of our ocean world to date. So it stands to reason that we should have something that is modular in nature, that is future upgradable, a platform where we could send a dozen or more people down for extended periods of time. Because as a scuba diver, my biggest frustration is the limit of time at the bottom of the sea. Just when things start getting interesting, right? Just when you go down with a tank on your back and you get settled in and you start seeing this soap opera unfolding before your eyes of movement, of color, of action. it's time to go back up because you've run out of air, because you want to avoid decompression obligations. So having a house and a workspace underwater makes sense, because now you become part of the ocean, right? You become part of that environment by becoming saturated. And we can always go into the lessons of being saturated if you want, but essentially you're flipping the rules upside down. Instead of having to come back to the surface because you've run out of air or it's time to avoid decompression obligations, you maximize decompression obligations, but you have unlimited air source, and you can go out in the water column 8, 10, 12 hours a day and come back in a safe or fairly safe environment like an International Space Station under the sea. And that allows for us to cater to things like wet and dry labs, having a nice large space for us to deploy people for extended periods of time, not hours or days or weeks, but weeks, months, and maybe even longer. It gives us the ability to experiment with sustainability. How does a small community work in tight-knit action while being conscious of their impact on the environment and trying to minimize that footprint? And so that gives us tangible actions, tangible results, tangible experimentation for things that we can do on land. Because if we remember correctly in our science, the globe, our planet, is a closed loop system. It is quite literally whatever happens to it happens to us. And so the same thing with an underwater habitat like Proteus. We need to be conscious of these actions. And so it gives us a live laboratory that we can experiment with social and human interactions, as well as robotics, as well as looking outside of that habitat and literally discovering a wealth of data, a wealth of chemical compositions, a wealth of environments that we can push the parameters of research and science in ways that we simply can't any other way. And all of this to say that, and I from what I hear from you, we have a group from Curaçao. So yay, Curaçao, awesome. One of my favorite ever places to go. We're going to install Proteus in Curaçao, thanks to the huge amount of support by the people, by the government, and by entities that have been there a long time. We're going to be able to put Proteus in the marine park, which is one of the last remaining, one of two, I believe, last remaining accruing coral reefs in the entire Caribbean. So it is a vital spot. It is a fragile spot. It is an invaluable spot for being able to have hope that corals will survive in the entirety of the Caribbean. And that gives us a responsibility to when we install Proteus, when we do research on Proteus, to be good caretakers and guardians of that place, and sentinels to keep an eye on, or a finger on the pulse of oceanic health in that region. Now, the only reason, or the way we can do that, and you saw that in the video, is we first have to understand the topography. And Curaçao is a very unique place, a very unusual place, in that it's on a pinnacle. And that gives us a topography that varies quite a bit. And that lends itself to a lot of research at varying depths with various types of species and geography and so on and so forth. But it also gives us an understanding that in order to build something as comprehensive as Proteus, which is about the size of a football field, half a football field, I'm sorry, or soccer field, if you will, we need to be able to mitigate things like its slope, which is anywhere from 22 to 45 degrees on average. Being a pinnacle, it gets deep very quickly. And so we need to also be able to understand what the operations are going to be like. And the only way we can do that is by ocean mapping. And in ocean mapping, basically, you take what is the idea of LiDAR on land, right? Where you use lasers to see what and take images of the topography, except that here we use acoustics, something called, in this case, multi-beam sonar technology that was developed in the early 1950s, late 1940s, with people like Dr. Edgerton, I'm sorry, from MIT, who was actually a friend of my grandfather's. And they would go out on Calypso and perfect some of that technology, sonar. Sonar is now used all over the place for submarine locations, for defense, but also as an imaging tool to map the bottom of the sea, where I think we've mapped about 30% at this point. And let it be known that mapping the bottom of the sea is not the same as going there and experimenting and exploring and so on and so forth, but it gives us quite literally a roadmap of where the best targets might be and what we should do with all that information. It also gives us the ability to scan, for example, in great detail and very high resolution, things like the USS Arizona, which was a very important ship for World War II. It was actually sunk in Pearl Harbor. And so now, without disturbing this fragile national monument, which many people died on, so it's a war memorial, we can get a much better idea of its design, where it was hit, and so on and so forth. So you can complete a historic view of what happened and how it sank and so on and so forth. Same kind of idea. You can have very high resolution topography to be able to look at, and this is how it works. Basically, from a small mobile vessel, you have a beam that goes down to the bottom and takes a nice image and a swath, and that data gets interpreted and then gets shown into kind of a map-like scenario. So it takes basically a lot of little data points. These are beams of sound, and that sound bounces off of different objects, whether it's the floor or objects themselves. And it gives you all these little data points that are then put together that give you depth, that give you size, that give you all sorts of other things, which I thought was pretty neat. And that's where we started with PROTEUS, is being able to map the bottom, which had never been done before in Curaçao. We only needed about a kilometer's worth of data, of fairly detailed data of what the bottom looks like from about where you snorkel all the way down to about 200 meters. That's presumably where most of the aquanauts will be going and doing their experimentation. And so since we flew down all that equipment and that personnel, and there were some amazing people that helped us with that, some of which were mentioned in the video, we were able to not only do our little piece, but since we already had that equipment down and that personnel, we decided to map the entirety of the marine protected area, because that we gave to Carmabi and others in Curaçao as a public good. It is also useful for looking at what things or how things change over time, so that we can get a better understanding of all that. And that's very important to us, because at the end of the day, our stay there with PROTEUS is meant to live at least 15 years on site. And so it gives us a much better idea and understanding of what's changing dynamically in the ocean, so that we can make better decisions here on land. And with that, I'm going to stop chatting your ear off, because I know I've gone probably way beyond my my time on that level. But let me see if I can stop sharing the screen. There we go. But that's essentially where we're at. We did the mapping. We're now doing some of the other studies in preparation for the building process. All of this plays into the engineering of PROTEUS. You could imagine that building a life support vessel, if you want to call it that, at the bottom of the sea to help sustain life, to have a fairly comfortable environment, to have some of the most advanced research tools available with dive operations and so on and so forth, is not the easiest thing in the world. So we need to have all that data that gets inputted into the engineering, so that we can deploy people for indefinite periods of time to do as much research as they need.
All right. Well, Fabien, thank you so much. It's such an exciting project. We know sea mapping is so important right now. We have our goal by 2030 to map the entire sea floor. We still have some estimates 80% to go, so we still have a ways to go. So it's nice to fill in those pieces wherever we can. So what I'd like to do, Fabien, is we've been playing a lot of Kahoot quizzes this week with the students who are joining us. So while you were presenting, I pulled together a short little Kahoot quiz behind the scene. We're going to get our students interacting a little bit, and we're going to see who comes out on top. So to those who are with us, it's kahoot.it. If you head over there, it's going to ask you for a PIN number. And lucky for you, I've got one of those here handy, front and center. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And our PIN number for today is going to be 2705283. If you have a device like a tablet or your mobile phone, you can scan that QR code. It'll get you in a little bit quicker. And we're going to give it a few moments here to let some of the students come in. Here come some students. And you're going to see you're going to get a cool animal name. We have it set up for an automatic name for you. So who we've got so far? The zany alpaca, the shining pony, the aquatic possum. There we go. You've ever come across an aquatic possum, Fabien?
That is awesome. No, I haven't seen one yet, but I'm sure we'll see many of them in this group.
Yeah, absolutely. Stellar frog. Very cool. So as you're joining, we've got 4 questions queued up, 2 multiple choice, 2 2 multiple choice, 2 true and false, 20 seconds to answer. So you get the answer right, you're getting some points. You get it right, but really quickly, you get even more points. If you get it wrong, but you do it really fast, nothing. You got nothing. You got to get that answer right and then do it as quickly as you can for those bonus points. We'll give another maybe 30 seconds here because students are still joining, like the inspired bee, the wonder crab, the dazzled ostrich. Very cool. Silver yeti. Okay, a few more seconds here. Let's see if we can push it over 100 in the quiz. Almost there. If you don't have one-to-one technology, your teacher could put it up at the front of the room. You could shout out your answers. That's always a fun way to do it if you don't have that one-to-one tech. But yeah, scan the QR code, punch in the details. You're good to go. And there we go. We just hit 100 students. So let's get things rolling. Here we go. First question coming up. What was the name of the reef base from Mission 31? Was it Deep Spot? Was it Aquarius? Was it Water Base 1? Or was it Nautilus? You see answers flying in already. Got about 5 seconds on the clock.
These are smart students. I'm sure they all got it right.
I think they'll be pretty, they're usually pretty on the ball. It's usually I mess up because I'm typing so fast. Aquarius, good job, crew. Let's see where we are. The mighty shark is in first place. Very cool. All right, let's jump into our next question. We got a true and false coming our way. We still have about 80% of the seafloor to map. Is that true or is that false? Usually we get pretty quick answers on our true and false.
That's a little bit trickier.
All right. Most of our students went with about 80%. I know you said, Fabien, maybe it's getting closer to 70.
Well, we're getting closer, and every day is different, right?
Yeah.
Because there are hundreds of ships out there mapping every day. So officially on the books, it's closer to 20. But with the latest updates, we probably won't get that till 2030. But the idea is to get 30% by 2030.
Okay.
So we're in the middle. We're in between.
All right. Well, we connected with the Nautilus yesterday, and they're out on Johnson Atoll. That's exactly what they're doing. Is they're using that multi-beam to map those areas. Very cool. The Honest Camel has slipped into first. Let's jump into our next one. Curaçao. It's a great location for Proteus because accessible reef, rich biodiversity, a pinnacle for various depth, or is it all of the above? Five more seconds to lock in your answer.
I'm sure they're all getting this one right.
All right. Sometimes though, when you're going fast and you see works, you just jump right in, right? Very cool. So Fabien, how long of a process was it to pick the site?
Well, ironically, we were headed towards a very different site to put the first of these Proteus because, truth be told, our plans are to put several of these out there. But the first one, the largest probably, ended up going to Curaçao fairly quickly. We were in negotiations with a different country, but within 2 weeks, the government of Curaçao signed an MOU with us. So we switched our gears And we're extraordinarily happy we did, because it is an amazing, amazing place.
There you go. You snooze, you lose. You got to be fast.
Right. That's right.
All right. What happened here? Oh, yeah. Amusing lemmings. Yeah. Very cool. All right. One more question. This is it. Anything can happen. A single beam sonar was used to map the region around the Proteus site. True or false? Single beam sonar was used to map the site. A few more seconds there to lock in. All right. Ooh, we tricked some of the students. It is single beam sonar, but multi-beam, obviously, with many points, is a much better way to get a nice bigger section of the area you're trying to map.
Right. Yeah, single beam sonar is used very often, as a matter of fact, mostly for things like location and such, depth, for example. But multi-beam sonar, although more expensive, is much more comprehensive and gives you a much better imagery.
All right. Let's check out our podium, see how things stacked out here. Third place, we've got the Royal Owl. Good job. Second place, we've got the Tropical Lark. And first place, the coveted first place, the Gentle Ferret. All right. Good stuff. Well, thanks everyone for playing along. It's always fun to have a little interaction time, but let's change gears and let's start meeting some of our classrooms. Let's get some of that Q&A action going. Stop the fun tunes in the background. There we go. So if you're tuning in live via YouTube, don't be shy. Let us know where you're joining from. And I got a few shout outs here. Connecticut, British Columbia, Toronto, Curaçao, some more places here in Ontario, Minnesota. Very cool. So keep those shout outs coming, get those questions coming in. But for now, let's start with some of our camera crew. We've got a great group here. So let's start off with grade 6s. We're going to go to Canada. We're going to Canada, Ontario. And let's bring Mrs. Piran's group in there. Hey, grade 6s, how we doing?
Awesome.
All right. Grab that mic and we're ready for you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. They're very excited.
Fantastic. We love Canada.
Yes, we're in Ottawa.
Woohoo!
All right. Who's got a question for us?
Hey.
Yeah. I think someone's coming up. Nice yellow shirt.
Yeah.
So talk really loud. Okay.
Oh, for some reason, I don't know, you're in a microphone dead spot. Can you back up a little bit? We lost you when you got really close. Strange.
Oh, again. No,
Can you, where you're standing, Mrs. Piran, seems to be a perfect microphone spot. I don't know why.
So you always wanted to do this job, or as when you're a child, or is this something an interest developed later in life? That's what she's asking.
Sure. So Fabien, did you always know ocean exploration was your thing, or was this gradual?
It was, it was something that I was exposed to from a young age, so I just fell in love with it. I didn't know it at the time because it was part of the background. But when you peek below that blue veneer, below the surface of the ocean, and you see how just crazy it is down there, how different it is, how much is going on. As a curious person, it caught my attention forever. I mean, it's just a pretty amazing place.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like how you described, you kind of touched on it at the beginning when you said, there's so much life around you. And the way I always think about it is if you go for a walk in the woods, you might see a few things, but it's fleeting. Birds fly away, mammals run away, but underwater, you're just absolutely surrounded with life. And oftentimes it's very curious life that, gets in kind of close. So it's just it's a world not a lot of people are experiencing, and I hope that changes a little bit more. More people get below.
Well, you know, I equate it to this. When we describe the ocean in class, we talk about the ocean surface, the surface of the planet being 72% of it is covered in ocean. But we're thinking about this the wrong way. We're thinking about this in a two-dimensional way, which distances us from the reality of what the ocean is. It's a living space. And if we look at our planet in a three-dimensional perspective, the ocean's actually about 99% of our world's living space, within which the vast majority of biodiversity lives and thrives. Because there's something that lives in virtually every level of the ocean, whereas on land, we're on a veneer. We're in more of a two-dimensional space. Yes, there are things that live in the ground, so there's certainly that. And air itself is a transient medium, with the exception of maybe bacteria and small objects like viruses and things like that. It's mostly, as you mentioned, birds. Birds use it as a highway, but they land in a tree or on land or what have you. And so, by and large, the ocean is the vast majority of our living space in the planet.
All right. Let's go to New Jersey. New Jersey, we have some grade 6, 7s hanging out with us with Ms. Hakanos. Let me bring them up front and center. There they are. Hey, New Jersey.
Yeah, I'm waving to you from across the river. I'm on a small island called Manhattan.
Do you guys need any special training if you want to be crew on the ship?
Do we need special training if you want to be crew?
If you want to be
I think that was a question, wasn't it?
Yeah, on Proteus, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, there is special training involved. If you're to, just like astronauts, if you want to go on a mission at Aquarius or Proteus or what have you, in underwater habitat, you have to train for it. First, you obviously need to become a scuba diver. And depending on the situation, meaning with Aquarius, for example, you need to have a certain amount of hours of scuba diving experience before you can go into training. And once you have those, then the training itself takes about 2 weeks. And it familiarizes you with the equipment like helmets, so hard hat diving, how to deal with emergencies underwater, because we have to remember something. When you're at the bottom of the sea in saturation, you might as well be an astronaut on the far side of the moon. You cannot go directly back to the surface without decompressing, so decompression obligations. And so anything that goes wrong, you have to deal with on site, whether it's equipment that's breaking or you run out of air or you lose your mask or what have you. Your safe zone is back at the habitat. So that requires a lot of training, and it's not necessarily something we innately have in us. Because I don't know if you've ever gone to the bottom of the pool and all of a sudden you realize you run out of air. The first thing you want to do is go straight to the surface to breathe more air, which is natural. In a situation like becoming an aquanaut, that is the worst thing you could do. So you have to detrain yourself and retrain yourself in very different kinds of thinking and operations.
All right. Thanks, New Jersey. Great question. Okay, we're going to go back to Canada now. Windsor, we've got Mr. Chitter's class hanging out with us. There they are. STEM geography for real this time, I think. Let's bring them in.
Will the Proteuses' food and water resources be self-sustaining with the surrounding environment?
That is a fantastic question, one I rarely get, which is surprising. The idea of what we're doing right now in preparation is, yes, we're going to try and make this as self-sustaining as possible. It's in the short term, and then in the first few years, it probably will not be, just because the technology is not there under those circumstances to provide all the nutrients and sustenance, water and food that the residents will need. But as much of it as possible will be experimented with, so that we can use, for example, aeroponics, and aquaponics. You'll be able to grow some of our own food. And that's two reasons. One, the pragmatic reason of, for answering your question, is generating our own food. But again, let's talk about closed loop systems. What goes in must come out, right? So you also have to deal with waste. How do we do that? And we're working with space agencies as well as other entities in the ocean, submariners, et cetera, who we can learn from to be able to make this as much as a closed loop system as possible. And as far as growing our own food outdoors, we want to make sure that we're not affecting the environment the way some aquaculture systems, open aquaculture systems are doing in certain parts of the world, because that's the last thing we want to do is destroy the very thing we're trying to study. So yes, we're trying our best. Right now, anything that is not going to be able to be part of that closed loop system will have to be brought back on land and treated and disposed with properly from there. But as much of it as we can, yes. And second, I said there are two parts to it. So the second reason is a selfish one. I find aquanaut food disgusting. So being a snobby Frenchman, I want to make sure that our crew is fed well. And so fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh foods as much as possible in our meals versus the freeze-dried packets that are very familiar to astronauts and the select aquanauts out there as well. It's similar to camping food. I don't know if you guys have ever tasted freeze-dried camping food, but essentially it's not particularly good for you. It's very practical because it's lightweight and it's packaged, but it doesn't taste good either. It may taste good the first time, but try 3 weeks of it, morning, noon, and evening. Oh, and by the way, as a side note, aquanauts burn 3 times as many calories underwater as people do on land. So we have to eat 3 times as much of that disgusting food to keep up with that.
All right. Great question, STEM crew. Fabien, I remember when we connected from Mission 31, and that was a complaint you had. You were even kind of banging the freeze-dried stuff against your head. I think 13 and 14 days in, and I think you were ready for something different, maybe.
I was very happy I did that, and thanks to you being able to facilitate it, because we got so many care packages after that from all over the world. It was very sweet of everyone to send us fresh or food that they made themselves, cookies, beef jerky, all sorts of really neat things. And I can't thank those people enough for supporting us. That was really, really, really cool.
All right, very cool. Well, let's grab a YouTube question, then we'll go back to camera classroom. So Mr. Walsh's crew is hanging out, and they're wondering if the multi-beam sonar, does that have an impact on wildlife at all?
Not that we know of. Underwater acoustics is a very interesting thing to study, and low and mid frequency sonar systems that are typically used in self-defense, right? Or what I would call war machines, essentially, do have an effect on cetaceans, so whales, dolphins, to some extent pinnipeds as well. But as far as multi-beam sonar technology for this kind of imagery, we haven't seen any effects of any significance.
All right, great question. Fourth graders, an online virtual crew is joining us, being represented by their teacher from St. Paul, Minnesota. Very cool. How are we doing today, St. Paul?
Doing great. Yeah, and I have a student here who would like to read the question.
Perfect.
All right, Aiden, go for it.
Can I go visit the Aquarius one day?
Yes. I mean, if it's still in existence. It's 35, almost 36 years old. So if it's still around and you have a desire to go and see Aquarius and the money to do it, because it does cost money to go down there, you can apply for a mission status, a mission opportunity, and go down there as an aspiring aquanaut. They even have 1 atmosphere missions, or unsaturated missions, for special occasions. So they will bring people down, lock out the habitat, and keep it at 1 atmosphere inside. And you can sleep there overnight, a little bit like a camper in the woods. You just simply can't go in and out of the habitat. And that's just so that it keeps your body at the same pressure as what we're all used to breathing on land. So you don't have to decompress and go through all the training necessary for that sort of thing. So that's the long answer, but the short answer is yes.
All right, very cool.
Thank you.
All right. We've done a few events over the years from Aquarius, including some NEMO missions where astronauts for ESA or NASA are kind of using it as a space analog. But we haven't done one for a couple of years, so I should reach out and see what's going down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool.
Absolutely. The last couple of years have been hard for everything, including missions to things like Aquarius, simply because you're sticking 6 people down there for a certain amount of time in a pressurized environment, so it augments anything that's particularly viral or toxic. So I don't think they had too many operations then. Maybe a couple of Navy operations, but I'm sure they're eager to have more missions soon.
All right, we're gonna head to Farmington, Missouri. We've got a summer school crew hanging out with us.
How much pressure would you have to withstand on Proteus?
So Proteus, it's very funny. We had this call this morning with I'm trying to dance around an NDA I have with a military institution because they asked the same question, and we're debating because we could put Proteus virtually at any depth because engineering-wise we can build it. We can build it to withstand vast amount of pressure. The problem becomes that if you go beyond a certain depth, you can't breathe regular air anymore. You have to start breathing mixes like trimix, which adds helium to the mix, or heliox, which is pure helium and oxygen. And those complicate a lot of things, including the training necessary, which is much more extensive, and the fact that helium is very expensive to breathe. And it makes your voice sound funny. So you need special translators for that. So we're looking at right now 3 atmospheres inside, which is a little deeper than what Aquarius is. But essentially, you'll feel that the air is thicker. So it's a little bit more syrupy, but it's regular air. And that's about the limit where oxygen, long-term exposure to certain pressures of oxygen is non-toxic. Beyond that, it starts becoming more of a risk. So that's why you have to add helium and take away oxygen. We're talking about 3 atmospheres approximately. We may be a little deeper than that, in which case then you're talking about trimix and special training.
Very cool. And I love, looking at the photos, the potential design to kind of swap out different components, different labs almost for different projects and such. That's pretty cool.
Well, that's something that never has been offered in previous habitats. Habitats typically look like a cylinder for most of them, not all of them, but most of them look like a cylinder. And they were purpose built. They were built for a certain amount of time or certain mission and then pulled out of the water. We're looking at this on a much longer term trajectory and on a flexibility that'll cater to things like biochemistry or pharmaceuticals, that will cater to being able to deploy AUVs or autonomous underwater vehicles, that'll be able to cater to large groups of people, 12 to 18 people for much longer periods of time. So you need that modularity to be able to be future upgradable, to be able to take a section out and put another section in, payload kind of systems that like the space station in space, where you can add modules and expand on it. It's the same concept.
All right, very cool. We've got some high schoolers hanging with us from Bishop Allen Academy, and they're wondering, what are some of the benefits of continuing ocean exploration?
Life. We know so little about the ocean. Without knowing about the ocean, it's like not knowing about our own bodies. Let me give you an example. We talk about plastic pollution as if it were out there. right? So we do beach cleanups every once in a while. We'll try and be more conscious at home, that sort of thing. But the reality is, what we're polluting out there comes back to haunt us, because what we're doing to the ocean, we're doing to ourselves. And without understanding what that dynamic is, we're doing a huge disservice to our future, to the future viability of our species and our children. Each one of us, on average, has about a credit card size worth of plastic in our bodies because of all the unbridled dumping of plastics in our environment for so many decades. And so if we get a better picture, better understanding of what's happening out there with plastic, we might be able to find better solutions than just going out there and cleaning up other people's garbage. Because at the end of the day, it's about changing our rhetoric, changing our mindset, so that we understand that whatever we do to the environment, we're doing to ourselves. So if we invest in the environment, if we do things that are positive for the environment, then we do things that are positive for our future, and vice versa. If we keep ignoring what we're doing, keep going to things that seem convenient at the time, but may be really bad ideas in the long run, then we're already seeing what that does. And so about the ocean, we can learn to better manage our resources. We can learn to better mitigate storm surges from climate change. We can look at better ways to address our everyday decisions that not only affect us in a beneficial way, but affect our environment in a beneficial way. The ocean's the barometer. It's the circulatory system that all life depends on. And the more we input positive things and take away negative things, the better investment it is for us long term. But we can't do that without knowing more about the ocean. I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, we've explored in any significant way less than 10%, probably more closer to about 7% of the ocean. We can look at the ocean as a battery, for example. If we were to integrate OTEC, ocean thermal energy conversion, in a fairly significant way, we could power the world's energy needs 9 times over, today's energy needs 9 times over, without any major or significant environmental effects, negative effects. Now, that's not a panacea. OTEC is a baseline energy. A baseline energy means that it doesn't require storage mediums off-peak like wind or solar, but you can't install OTEC everywhere. So it's certainly not a universal solution, but it is one of the pieces of the puzzle that we need to start looking into seriously and adopting if we're going to address the things that we need, including, you know, plugging in our electric vehicles or turning on the lights or what have you. Or having air conditioning, as in the case of summertime.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Fabien, I want to start off with a huge shout out to our classrooms. It was so great to see our camera classrooms. It was so great to have the classrooms joining in via YouTube, sending in great questions, playing along the Kahoot with us. That was a lot of fun. I want to share a few links, so definitely check out the events coming up. In fact, tomorrow, Dr. Pamela Fletcher is going to join us from Nicaragua, and we're going to check out the sea turtle conservation initiative. So that should be really cool. So lots of events still coming up this week. Don't miss them. Register there. The Fabien Cousteau Ocean Learning Center, you can check it out there with that link. Of course, you don't want to miss out that. There's some great curriculum and great projects, not just in Curaçao, but Florida, Latin America as well. And then, of course, explorers.org. So a huge shout out to the Explorers Club. Here we are broadcasting from the map room up on the 5th floor. So great to have this space. If you visit the website and you're in New York or across the river in New Jersey, you could come to the club over the next few days and check out some of the live events. You'll find the whole schedule for you there. And Fabien, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to connect during World Ocean Week. I'm sure you've got a busy week ahead of you, but thank you so much for being with us. PROTEUS is such an exciting concept and project on the go, and I can't wait till it's up and running, and who knows, broadcasting live from Curaçao. Pretty cool.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And thank you so much for having me. I look forward to connecting with all of you out there from Proteus in the next couple of years, whether you're still in school or in university or doing something professionally. Very much looking forward to sharing that exploit and those adventures and what's beneath that blue veneer. I mean, it's just an amazing place. And on that note, maybe I'll end with something that my grandfather said to me when I was a child. And I remember it's probably, I would consider it the most valuable inheritance I ever had, which is people protect what they love what they understand, and they understand what they're taught. Without that knowledge, we can't make proper decisions. But in today's world, I mean, kids, you can connect with anyone in the world at any given time, and that's serious power if you use it correctly. So I'm looking very much forward to what your generation does and becoming better stewards of the planet than we've been. And with that, I wish you all an amazing World Ocean Day, Ocean Week, and a great summer holiday.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We're signing off for today.